Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are presented by Full Press Coverage. Check out our podcast on Spotify. We are also on fullpresscoverage.com. Every time we do one, we tweet it out too. Make sure you get all the info, and you can listen on your computer. You can listen on your phone. You can listen on your tablet. Basically, you can listen anywhere that has a speaker. Sap, what is going on, my friend? How has your week been?
It's been a rough week, Jet. I mean, I know we talk about basketball, and you all know my love for LeBron James, and he's had a fine week. I think he's still the best player in basketball, but my favorite football team, more specifically, my favorite football player, Aaron Rodgers, I thought this was going to be the year that he got to a second Super Bowl and won a second Super Bowl. It didn't work out. He had to play great Sunday against Tampa. He played a good game, but not a great game, and they needed him to be great to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So that was tough. And then a couple of days later, my favorite athlete of all time, my favorite baseball player, Barry Bonds, again denied induction into the Baseball Hall of Fame, has one more year of eligibility. So not a real great week. And then, the Lakers lose a couple games in a row. LeBron goes 1 of 12 in his last 12 shots in a unnerving loss to the Detroit Pistons. And not a good week. And it's cold, too, Jet. It's really cold out.
If it makes you feel better, the Celtics also lost to the Pistons. Does that
That's
help?
crazy, isn't it? Yeah, the Pistons beat the Celtics and the Lakers. I think the Lakers are the best team, and the Celtics are damn good. And maybe the Pistons, like once every 2 weeks, rise up and play well.
No, it's their strategy of having every single power forward in the league.
Right.
That's what's working for them. They've won like 5 games, but they beat good teams in those 5 games. I get that it's been a tough week for you. The only thing that could have made it worse is if there was like a PED suspension for Roger Federer or something like that. That's your other guy. That would have really been the cherry on top. But we'll work on making it a little bit better with this podcast. You were in New Hampshire a little bit this week, so we're doing it a little bit later than usual. But that gives us more NBA stuff to dissect, so it works out. There's never a negative reason to do the podcast. So there's always stuff going on, plenty to talk about. And yesterday, the NBA officially opened their voting to the fans for the All-Star game this year. We don't know if there's actually going to be an All-Star game. There may well be. Reports are that the Players Union, led by Chris Paul, who we both like and I think we respect tremendously, are trying to get a All-Star game in Atlanta. Just the game, no dunk contest, no rookie game, no celebrity game, nothing like that. Just the All-Star game one night in Atlanta where Turner is headquartered, so it wouldn't be an issue for the broadcast team or anything like that. And to raise money for, I believe it's historically black colleges and universities. That's what the intention would be. They're working with the league to see if they can get that game going. I know a lot of people want to see the game happen. Last year was the first time in a long time the game was actually entertaining because the method that they used, I forget what the exact name of it is. It's named after the guy who created it. Basically, it's like there's always a finish with a game-winning shot. Right. So that would presumably be the method again. So that would lead to another entertaining game, you would think. And it looks like there's going to be a lot of potentially first or second time All-Stars. So a lot of reasons to have the game this year. And also there's always reason to have people be entertained during this pandemic when we're all basically at home. So it's looking like the All-Star game itself may actually happen, but regardless of if it does or doesn't, they're still going to name All-Stars at the very least. And the fans, as usual, have 1/3 of the vote, as do the GMs, as do the players. So what we're going to do to start off the show today is give you who our vote would be for the top 5 in each conference, just the starters. Don't feel like naming the whole rosters. Not a whole lot of point in going through player for player for the entire roster right now. So Sap and I put together our starting 5 in the Eastern and Western conferences. I also went above and beyond, Sap, and named a couple of my last guys out, like who was right on the fringe for me. Because I am cheating and didn't want to just, omit people. But I still named who my starters were. But I had some hard decisions. I got to be honest with you, especially in the Western Conference. It got really tricky to name 5 starters. It was a little bit easier for me in the East. And I'm curious to see who you had. I know who you have, at least in the Western Conference. It's going to start with your guys. So why don't you just do your Western Conference All-Stars and we'll get it over with.
And we also looked at this too, at least I did, is looking who the fans may want as well. That
Taco Fall will be in there. Yep.
Taco Fall will be in there. You want Marcus Smart in the game, obviously, but I'm thinking along the lines of, look, the fans want to see Steph Curry probably in the starting lineup, maybe over Dame Lillard, even though Lillard.
So are you predicting who's going to be in?
No, I'm going to give you my starters, but I think that weighs into what happens. The popularity of the players, obviously, is used. Curry remains one of the 3 or 4 most popular players in the league.
Yao Ming started like every All-Star game because he got every vote in China.
And Curry's still playing at a high level, so he would deserve to be in the starting lineup. So in the Western Conference, one forward is LeBron James. I think he's still the best player in basketball, despite his poor shooting in the second half against the Pistons. I have Kawhi Leonard as the other forward. Now, that's difficult because there's load management with Kawhi. He's missed a couple games with COVID. I thought the other forward could have been Paul George, who's had a nice year for the Clippers. And the Clippers have a very good record, so you'd like to see them represented in the starting lineup. So I go with LeBron and Kawhi at forward. At center, I think this is one of the easiest calls of anyone, right? It's Nikola Jokic, who's right now a top MVP candidate. So I think we agree that Jokic is having an all-star caliber season and an MVP caliber season. I'm going to go with Luka Doncic as one of my guards. And again, it's difficult. He plays no defense. He's shooting like below 30% from 3, but he's nearly averaging a triple-double. And he's starting to get up to speed now that he seems to be in a little bit better shape. And I'll go with Steph Curry as the other starting guard. Steph's had some phenomenal games this year. He has Golden State in playoff contention despite not having Klay Thompson. So I'm going to go with Curry there. And the biggest omission for me was Dame Lillard. I think it came down to Curry or Lillard as the other guard. And I could even buy into Lillard and Curry being the 2 starters with Doncic not being one of the starters. But I go with LeBron, Kawhi, Jokic, Doncic, and Steph Curry as my starters in the West.
Was LeBron the biggest no-brainer for you? Were you immediately with LeBron, or do you think Jokic is the biggest no-brainer?
I really think it's Jokic in that sense because, who's the second best center in the West? And what are we calling Anthony Davis, who, by the way, I know last podcast we talked about guys who've underperformed so far this year. Anthony Davis is one of them. He doesn't seem to be in rhythm at all this year. And I think part of it is the Lakers had such a short offseason, right? They won the title in the middle of October, and they started their title defense 9-10 weeks later. Unless you're LeBron James, who's superhuman, a 2-month gap between the end of one season and the start of the next is not enough. And I think Davis is just going through some load management, not playing at the same level he played at the end of last year. The other thing, too, is I do think there's a gap between LeBron and Kawhi at forward as well. I mean, Kawhi just doesn't play as much as LeBron. He just doesn't. He's not as durable. I don't think he brings it every night the way LeBron does. So, I think the 2 easiest ones for me were Jokic and LeBron. I think those were pretty easy. And I've probably said Jokic's name differently every time I've mentioned him.
I know you're getting it right. Jokic,
it's Jokic.
Sounds right to me. Yeah.
And I like.
You could call him the Joker. That's another nickname.
I like the Joker, and he looks the least like any great basketball player because I think I'm in better shape than him and probably have a higher vertical. But man, he's among the league leaders in assists. I mean, this guy is just skilled through the roof. There's times I watch him. He has a little Larry Bird in his game with the great passing and an ability to hit 3-pointers. So I think the 2 best players in the Western Conference this year would be LeBron and the Joker.
You believe it or not, Sap, and we disagree plenty on basketball. I have the exact same starting 5.
Well, that's so fun.
I know it's not fun. We should have coordinated before, but I have the exact same starting 5 for similar reasons to you. LeBron, they have the second best record in the West, and they're the defending champions. He hasn't missed a game. They're playing really well. He deserves it. Kawhi, he's missed, I think, 4 or 5 games, but the Clippers are playing really good. Well, they're keeping pace in the top of the West, and he's been their best player. As good as Paul George has been, Kawhi has still just been a tick better than him. Doncic's numbers are just too good to ignore to me. I know the Mavs aren't playing particularly well, but I don't know that Lillard's it's not like the Blazers are lighting the world on fire right now. So even if Lillard's numbers were a little bit less and the Blazers were playing really well, I might still put Lillard in ahead of Doncic, but he's in a similar situation where he's got good numbers. The team's playing okay, but Doncic's numbers are just better than Lillard's right now. So that's why I put him in. Jokic, like you said, that you have to have a center or a big, and he's by far the best in the Western Conference, and no one's really a close second. I don't know who you would even. Maybe Christian Wood would be the second best guy in the Western Conference in terms of centers.
Rudy Gobert, because Utah's been so good, but Utah, he's not at that level.
No one's close to it. And Curry, and between again Curry and Lillard, or Curry and Paul George, I think Curry's played better than those guys, and he's really operating with a limited team right now. He's getting some flashes from the rookie James Wiseman, and Draymond's there, but it's not like they're a particularly talented roster right now. And so Curry's having to do a lot of heavy lifting, and he's successfully done a lot of heavy lifting. So he gets the nod for me. My last people out in the West were Paul George and Anthony Davis. Again, Anthony Davis, it's the numbers are down a little bit. I think 21 points isn't enough scoring from somebody who's that talented. But the defense has still been top notch. And I value that, and I value winning with the All-Star game. I know it sounds kind of silly, but I do think that record should play part in it, which seems almost counterintuitive to say. Neither of us have anybody from the Jazz on here who have the best record in the NBA. But I honestly, I couldn't put Gobert over Jokic, even though they have a much better record. And I couldn't put Donovan Mitchell in the starting lineup over any of those guys. So I don't know, what they're going to have. Probably they'll both make the team is my guess, especially if the Jazz keep up this pace. So that'll be nice for them. They have 2 All-Stars in Utah, but I couldn't really justify putting anybody in the starting lineup there, which is unusual for a team that has the best record in the NBA to not have a starter in the All-Star game. But if this holds, the Jazz, I don't think will have a starter in the All-Star game.
No, I doubt it. And again, Donovan Mitchell is, to me, one of the 20 best players in the world, and yet he's towards the end of the top 20. And he's kind of a unique player, right? He's about 6'1", about 215 pounds. I don't know who you could really even compare him to.
He's compared to Dwayne Wade a decent amount.
That's what I like to see. But Wade was 6'4", so there's a little bit of a difference there. But he kind of seems to be kind of a poor man's Dwayne Wade, which is a compliment, right?
Yeah, it's not.
Dwayne Wade's one of the 30 greatest players in the history of the sport. And I think Anthony Davis has had a bad week like I've had, because he's a huge Packers fan as well. So maybe he's just going through a tough time like me since our Packers lost. And I know Lil Wayne always had a bad week, also had a bad week. The
freshly pardoned Lil Wayne. I think he's on cloud 9. He doesn't care about this.
He got
his pardon.
Packers fan. Yeah, he got pardoned, but he wanted to get back to the Super Bowl.
You think if he was asked, what would you prefer, the Packers win or the pardon? Do you think he would have taken the pardon or the Packers win?
Packers win. I mean, he wasn't in jail. I mean, it's not going to affect his record sales. In fact, maybe it improves your record sales if you're still a convicted felon. I don't know. I don't know how that works. I
thought it improved that. Robert Kraft's street cred improved tremendously after he got caught with, I guess they're not prostitutes. He got off and they're deleting the tape. Right. So,
so I mean, it
helps
to have that.
It helped his street cred. Let's just say that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I never thought I'd use myself, Anthony Davis, and Lil Wayne in the same sentence, but we're all mourning the fact that the Packers came up short.
It'd be a weird Jeopardy question, right? What do these 3 men have in common?
Exactly.
What is the Packers? All right, so we'll move on to the Eastern Conference. I'll start us off this time, Sap. In the Eastern Conference, my biggest no-brainer was Joel Embiid. I had him. He's the big there. Then I have Giannis, who will be a staple as a starter for the next 10 years probably. He's not going to miss a start in the All-Star game. Then I had to figure it out a little bit more. Kevin Durant, I thought deserved it. He's in there for me. And then my 2 guards are Trae Young from the Atlanta Hawks and Jaylen Brown from the Boston Celtics. It seems like a homer pick, but if you go and look at the numbers, it absolutely bears it out to me. He's played like an all-star starter, not just an all-star this year. So that's my East 5 right now: Embiid, Giannis, Durant, Young, and Brown. Who you got, Sap?
Okay, the front court seems pretty simple, right? Embiid's clearly the best center in the East, the way Joker's the best center in the West. Embiid is also an MVP candidate. I think Durant is an easy one. I think he's a top 5 MVP candidate, although Brooklyn hasn't really caught hold yet because, Kyrie wasn't there for the beginning of Harden, and then, they want to do some load management with Harden and Durant, and they're going to have to work through some issues with Kyrie, and they've had some injuries and lack of depth. So they're not taking off quite yet, but Durant looks to be spectacular.
He's averaging 30 points a game, so
right in his
off
sleep,
an Achilles injury,
and off an Achilles injury, and he does it so damn efficiently. That's what makes me appreciate him more. Like I always used to rail against Carmelo Anthony when he put up 28 points a game. I'm like, yeah, he takes so many damn shots and he's dominating the ball. With Durant, you like watch the game.
No,
and
he's not Carmelo.
No, you watch Durant and go, he had 36 tonight. I don't remember him really, taking a lot of shots. He just seemed to hit every one of them. I got Giannis in there as well. And Giannis is kind of pulled back a little bit this year. And maybe he's just trying to reinvent his game a little bit so then when they get to the postseason, he can shine. So the front court's easy. I think if you have anybody else in the front court, you're not paying attention. So Embiid, Durant, and Giannis. I've got Bradley Beal over Trae Young. Beal's leading the league in scoring. Now, he's a volume shooter, to say the least. He's also averaging nearly 6 assists per game with not a lot around him. He is a liability on defense, but, when you score 30-plus a game and lead the league in scoring, I think you should be on the All-Star starting team. And I'm going with Jaylen Brown as well. I mean, my feelings of Jaylen Brown. He's one of my 5 favorite players in the league. He's my favorite Celtic. Off the court as much as on the court. I just really respect the hell out of this guy. And you can just see how he's improved every single year. Now his mid-range game is supreme. He's shooting 57% from mid-range. And I know that's supposed to be a dying component in the NBA, but I think it's still a very viable component. We saw Kawhi Leonard with a mid-range game win a championship 2 years ago. So I agree with you on Jaylen Brown. Tough omission for me. Trae Young, yes. Again, he's not an efficient scorer. He's so damn entertaining to watch. James Harden's at times looked a little out of it in Brooklyn, but he's still putting up decent numbers with the Nets.
Yeah, he hasn't played enough games.
He hasn't played enough games. He played several in the West and not as much.
Also, I don't want to reward him.
No, true. Yeah, for just working his way out. Yeah, he did his George Costanza impression trying to get fired by the Yankees, driving around the parking lot with the World Series.
Yeah, word on the street is that Deshaun Watson's on the phone with him trying to figure out how exactly to get out of Houston. Yeah. He's the expert right now is how to get out of Houston.
And they're so stupid in Houston, they probably won't even figure that out. And also Kyrie Irving's had a great year when he's on the court. I mean, but I can't possibly put him in the starting lineup. He went AWOL for a couple of weeks. But when he's been on the court, man, he's been good. So we're in agreement on the front court. Embiid, Durant, Giannis. We agree on Jaylen Brown. That's not a homer pick. He deserves to be in the starting lineup. I just went with Bradley Beal over Trae Young, but I could see either one.
I think also with Jaylen Brown, you have to give credit to him in terms of he's played a bunch of games without Jason Tatum too, because Tatum was out with COVID, as was a couple other Celtics players. So he's had to really hold down the scoring fort for the Celtics and keep them afloat while their other best player, young player, was out. And really did a tremendous job. He's one of only a few players to have 2 40-point games already this season. It seems like every night he's putting up a new career high, which shows you how much he's improved his game. So I think he's really deserving of that, not just that first All-Star appearance, but a legitimate, clean All-Star start. I think he's played himself into it. And now, obviously, the All-Star game is still a little bit away from us. But as of right now, with the first returns, I would say he's fully deserving. As far as why I went Trae Young over Bradley Beal, the numbers are obviously really hard to ignore with Bradley Beal. I mean, he's leading the league in scoring. He can seemingly put up 50 whenever he feels like it. They're just the team is so bad. I can't. If they were even a little bit better, I think he would be a no-brainer in there for me. But they've won 3 games. I mean, I know they've missed it, and he's missed a bunch because the whole team had COVID for like 2 weeks. So they missed like 6 games. But I mean, it's not a horrible roster, and they've only won 3 games. Like, I mean, really, if you look at the team, the roster isn't that bad. And to have only 3 wins, I don't see that he's impacting winning in any meaningful way. So it was hard for me to put him in the starting lineup when his team is just so crappy. And listen, I think he's a better player right now than Trae Young, but Young's teams played a little bit better. And I couldn't bring myself to reward a guy on a 3-11 or 3-12 team, whatever the hell they are. It's the same thing that kept Beal out of the All-Star game last year. He'll make the All-Star game this year, no problem. He'll make it. I'm not going to put him in the starting lineup when his team is so god-awful.
Yeah, no, that's a tough part of it, and that's why we didn't name any Detroit Pistons, despite their big victories over the Lakers and Celtics. Yeah, the Wizards have been god-awful this year. And again, I don't look at Bradley Beal as a force multiplier. I mean, he kind of plays unto himself. He's a dynamite scorer. He's a volume scorer. Not very good on the defensive end. I think he's a good passer if he had some people to pass to. So I just put him in there over Trae Young. But again, these are all, close picks. The big question is, does Gordon Hayward make the All-Star team? Not as a starter, but as a reserve. And would that be an ultimate, kick in the the Danny Ainge? Because he got a trade exception for him, not something better than that could help this team right now. He's playing like an all-star.
Yeah, I'd put him in. Not obviously not as a starter, but I'd put him in the all-star game. The hardest omissions for me, because I did this in the West too, were Tatum was hard for me to omit because he's played fantastic when he's played, and obviously he's a Celtic, so I'm biased. He'll make the team.
You're talking just as a starter. Right.
Yep. Yeah, I'm talking just as a starter. He'll make the All-Star game.
Absolutely.
No problem. Same with Beal. He'll make the All-Star game, no problem. Beal, I said, was my hardest person to leave out. And then the last guy that was on the board for me was, believe it or not, Colin Sexton. I think he's going to make the All-Star game this year. And I was debating putting him in because the Cavs are playing better than anybody expected them to play. They took it to the new look Brooklyn Nets when they had their big three for the first time. Specifically, Colin Sexton took it to Kyrie Irving. I mean, absolutely lit him up.
Yeah.
So I think he's playing as well as any guard in the East right now. So he was one of my on the fringe guys, and I think he will make the team, and the Cavs will get an All-Star for the first time since LeBron left.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think he deserves it. And again, to belabor the point, but I'll continue on that path. That's the guy the Celtics essentially traded for.
Yes,
Kyrie Irving.
We know
we're
that.
We're not saying that Danny Ainge would have selected Colin Sexton with that 8th pick, but Colin Sexton is becoming a star, and you think an all-star, and I think as well. I think he'll make the all-star team, and let's hope they have this game. And I think Atlanta's the perfect place. The players love going there, and it'll be for predominantly
Lou Williams, especially
black.
He loves.
Lou Williams will show up no matter what, even if he's not an all-star. But he's got to go to the strip club and get lemon pepper chicken wings, which he likes, which sound very good. In fact, I know a few people that have been to that location say the food is damn good. You don't usually think of a strip club having good food, but apparently that one has it. But yeah, to raise money for predominantly black schools, Atlanta is really the black entertainment capital of the East, right? You can make a case that LA is the entertainment capital in the black community out west, and Atlanta in the East. And I think it would be a fantastic place to have the All-Star game. And you want to see that. And again, no fans in the stands. You raise money. Turner's there, so you could have, Barkley, Shaq, Kenny Smith, and that crew together, which is always entertaining. So let's hope it happens. It's one of my favorite events. I know there's no defense played and all that, but with the new system they had, it was definitely interesting.
Yeah, so we would have right now. I'd have Brown, Durant, Embiid, Giannis, and Trae Young against LeBron, Kawhi, Doncic, Jokic, and Curry. Again, I think they haven't necessarily said though if the format would still be a draft again this year. If it would be East versus West, I'm not sure how they'd want to do it with with COVID and having just the All-Star game. Maybe they'd want to go back to the traditional East-West thing. I think actually it would work out great because the conferences are damn close in terms of the top talent. I mean, really, it's not like a couple years ago where it was just embarrassing. It was like the West had every single good player and the East had LeBron. So it's not like that anymore. I think that you could make a case for either conference being the better conference right now in terms of the talent that they have, especially with the talent the Nets have accumulated, really seem to tip the balance, and the talent that the Rockets lost.
Because you had two guys go from the Western Conference to the East, and Durant and Harden. Russell Westbrook goes from the West to the East. So, a lot of very, very top-tier talents now in the Eastern Conference. And maybe you have the two top vote-getters again, probably LeBron and Giannis, if that's the case, be the general managers. And in that case, LeBron's team will be better than Giannis's team because LeBron is a much better executive than Giannis. He has much more experience at it. So I think
Giannis
he would
is
have
kind
that
of
edge.
bad at drafting.
Horrible.
And yet the games have been competitive, but not the draft picks I would have made from Giannis. But, maybe he values playing with guys he likes more than LeBron.
True.
I don't know.
True.
I'm not
LeBron's
sure.
all about talent.
But you're right. It probably would be LeBron and Giannis again because it's been them the past 2 years. Though I think this year would be fun to see the East-West. I prefer that anyways than the draft.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's not like these guys really care who wins that game. And unless it's the end of the game, then they care who wins. But for the first, however many minutes, 3 3/4 quarters, they don't care.
No,
so those
don't.
are.
Then they turn it on late in the game.
That's what we have for our all-star picks right now.
Yep.
Again, voting just opened yesterday on NBA.com, on different team websites and social media. You can cast your vote. There's a bunch of ways to do it. So I would advise you, if you're listening, to vote early and often for every member of the Celtics: Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Taco Fall. Get your votes in for those guys as early and often as you can. Don't stop voting for the Celtics players. And if you can help it, don't vote for any of the guys on the Lakers. I'd love to see a Lakerless NBA All-Star game. I think that would send a great message to the league about unity and all that stuff that the GOP has been clamoring for recently.
That ain't happening.
So this kind of plays off of the All-Star stuff, Sap, and that you and I were talking off the air about who we have as our top 5 MVP candidates this year. You're going to hear the same names, but as we had in our All-Star game, because you would conceivably be an All-Star starter if you're a top 5 MVP candidate, I would think. So I want to hear you rank them from inverse order, Sap, 5 to 1. Can you do that? Do you have it written down in such a way?
Jet, you know me better than that. I come prepared with my yellow legal pad and my black Sharpie. I've got everything written down so that it's right there at my fingertips.
Not only am I prepared, though, Sep, I have numbers to back up my rankings.
Well,
so I'm going to quickly refute whatever you have, I'm sure.
Okay, sounds good. I think one guy I'm leaving out now, but he'll probably get in the top 5 is Giannis. Again, he's kind of pulled back a little this year. Maybe he's trying to work on his game. He's taking more 3-pointers, realizing that that's maybe something he's going to have to do in the postseason to get the Bucks over the hump. So I kind of left him out. I also don't. It's
also the Jordan LeBron syndrome, right?
Yeah,
People are sick of voting for the same guy for MVP.
Well, I also think they made a mistake last year. Some of the voters thinking we probably should have given it to LeBron. I'm not saying that LeBron necessarily deserved the MVP last year. It should have been closer than it was. I think Giannis got like 85% of the first place votes to 15% from LeBron. It should have been closer than that. It shouldn't have been that much of a runaway.
I know that's what you think. That's fair. But when I go to MVP and I'm looking if it's a tight race, I go to what does the guy have around him in terms of help and how much. So how much does he matter to his team? Obviously, LeBron affects winning more than anybody in the NBA. I can't deny that. But I looked at the Bucks last year and I look at the Lakers last year, and I think if the Bucks took off Giannis from their team, they would be the absolute worst team in the league, probably. If the Lakers took off LeBron, they'd be not very good, but they'd still have
the
Anthony
Pelicans.
Davis.
They'd be the Pelicans. Yeah, which is a borderline.
That's how I looked at it last
team.
year. So,
okay,
no more interruptions. Go ahead, do your 5 to 1.
No, that's fine. And I'll bring Aaron Rodgers into this as well. So we both agree he deserves the NFL MVP because he's working with less than, say,
I voted
Patrick
for Derrick
Mahomes.
Henry.
There you go. Or I'm surprised you didn't vote for one of the cornerbacks that you like, Jalen Ramsey or Jair Alexander. Those are all
you led the league
guys.
in interceptions. I voted for
those
JC
cornerbacks.
Jackson.
You love the crazy cornerbacks and the crazy wide receivers, especially the ones that aren't too talented. You don't like those top-tier wide receivers.
And I voted for N'Keal Harry second for MVP.
Yes, you were very high on him in college. I do remember that. Number 5 for me is the guy who's supposed to be the MVP favorite, and he's starting to, again, like I said earlier, get traction. I think he's going to end up averaging a triple-double. Still not crazy about his defense. Still not crazy about his inefficiency from beyond 3. But I got Luka at number 5. And again, I'm going to need to see the Mavericks start to win games because you can't be an MVP candidate if your team is outside the playoffs and below 500. But I think as we get going, he's going to be a top 5 candidate. I've got Kevin Durant at number 4. The thing that's going to probably hurt him from winning this MVP is if the Nets are smart, there's going to be some load management there. He's coming off an Achilles injury, and he's playing at such a high level. But if they're smart, load manage Durant so that when you get to the end of the season, into the postseason, that he's fresh. Number 3 to me is Joel Embiid. It seems like he is taking this very, very seriously this year, more so than at any other time. Maybe that's the Doc Rivers impact. It's also helped that they've gone out and got 3-point shooters, and that's what you need to help Embiid because that opens up a lot of free space for him. I mean, he destroyed the Celtics in back-to-back games. He scored 80 points combined in the 2 games. They have no answer for him. Seems to be in better shape than he normally is. I hope he continues to keep that up throughout the season. He does have a tendency to become Josh Beckett, where he puts like 20 pounds on during the season, and you go, how did that happen? A basketball player put 20 pounds on during the season. That's kind of
easier to do it as a pitcher to be out of shape, right?
Right, than a basketball player.
player.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. Harden at least has taken the weight off since he went to Brooklyn. He had no choice but to take the weight off. I think if he added any weight, he would have just exploded. So I've got
less
Embiid.
Restaurants are open in New York right now.
True, absolutely. Yes, he's getting some exercise in Brooklyn. Embiid 3. I've got Joker at number 2. I think Joker's numbers are just startling. I mean, he's another guy that's averaging a triple-double among the league leaders in assists. Not an impact guy on defense, but, man, he is so damn skilled. And I've got LeBron at number 1, and I know it's close, and I'm putting him at number 1 because here's the thing. They won the championship in October. 2 months later, he comes back, and he's ready to go. He hasn't missed a game yet this year. Now, he's questionable for the Saturday night game against the Celtics with an ankle. I hope he plays. He's 4th in the league in minutes at 36 years old. You would think this is the time in his career where, he may turn the keys over to Anthony Davis and say, okay, Anthony, this is your team, or at least you're my partner in this. And, you're going to have to carry more of the load. Instead, they're load managing Anthony Davis, who's 8-9 years younger than LeBron and has not played anywhere near the minutes.
I'm not sure why LeBron has been so insistent on playing the amount of minutes and the amount of games that he does. I mean, I respect it. I think that's awesome. I think, you get paid for 82 games if you can play in all 82 games. I think that's how it should go.
Right.
And no other profession can you say, I'm going to take the day off and still collect a paycheck for this. Just because I'm feeling a little sore. No days off.
At
there's the combines at the Senior Bowl. There's cameras. He has his consiglieres there.
He knows a lot about cameras, that's for sure.
I'm saying why is he at this point in his career? Why is he so insistent to play so much?
Now you're sounding like Skip Bayless, who think he's doing this as again part of his legacy. Like he's never going to catch Jordan for championships.
Not float a conspiracy theory. I simply asked the question why.
All right, I'm here as the LeBronista of New England to answer that. I think part of it is, this is going to be part of his legacy, right? So we always heard that Jordan never took days off. Jordan, I think, played 81 or 82 games in like 11 of his 14 seasons, which is insane. The guy never took a night off. But that was a different time. This is more about load management and players being ready for the postseason, all of that. I think, look, at 36, he's still in phenomenal shape. I think you're going to have to start to manage him a little bit, although he's only averaging 33 minutes per game, which is the least of his career. But is that enough of a pullback, right? Isn't it better to maybe take a game or two off rather than going from 36 to 33 minutes? Is that a huge difference? Unless he's just trying to set an example. We won the championship. We're coming back. We want to defend it. I want to show the young guys on the team this is how it's done. And maybe sending some sort of message to Anthony Davis that, you get to sometimes play through this. Anthony Davis has never been anywhere near as durable as LeBron. And again, LeBron, Michael Jordan are the two players in the history of the league. And you say they should have won more MVPs, and they deserve more MVPs, right? Jordan has 5 and probably should have had 8 or 9. LeBron has 4, probably should already have 7, right? I mean, he lost one to Derrick Rose. I think one of the years he lost the MVP to Russell Westbrook because Westbrook averaged a triple-double, but LeBron's numbers were better. And he lost an MVP to James Harden, and his numbers were better. And last year you can make a case he should have won it over Giannis. So I think when there's nobody having an otherworldly season, and no one really is right now. I mean, I know Jokic and Doncic are having really good years, but it's not translating into a championship run. Maybe they just say, you know what, when in doubt, let's just give it to LeBron. I'm going to compare it to a little bit in 2017 when Tom Brady won his 3rd MVP. You remember through most of that year, Carson Wentz looked like he was going to be the MVP, got hurt in the 14th game. And all of a sudden it was like, okay, you know what? No one had a historical season, but damn, Brady was good again. And they didn't get back to the Super Bowl, although it's a regular season award, and Brady won it. I could see that happening with LeBron. If he averages 26, 8.5 and 8.5, and they have the best record in the league, and no one has like a ridiculous year, the voters may say, you know what, we probably should have gave him a few more of these MVPs. Let's give him another one.
Well, what happens, Sap, if he, in the second half of the year, starts taking some games off and plays, in less games? Do you think that changes the MVP race? Would that knock him down a peg on your
It could.
Totem pole
because the thing is, you have to also see what the other candidates do. Like Kawhi's never in the MVP race because he load manages
he
to
won't
the point
play
where he plays 75% of the game. Kyrie Irving's never going to be in the discussion, and he misses 30% of the games for whatever reasons. Durant's probably not going to be really up there this year because I think if they're smart, load management with him because of the Achilles. So now it comes down to players like Doncic and Jokic and Embiid. Does Embiid look like the guy that's going to play every game? He's going to need some time off, to save himself. He's such a huge guy. Embiid. I didn't realize how big Embiid is until I saw him the other night against LeBron, and he was covering LeBron out on the perimeter several times. LeBron's 6'9", 260. Embiid dwarfed him.
Yeah,
like he was noticeably big,
and he moves so well.
And he moves. Yeah, he was like 7'2", and he moves like Olajuwon, and he's bigger than Olajuwon was. I'm like, this. If his head is on and he's focused, he could be the most dominant player in the league. He could be close to a Shaq type player with even some more skills on the perimeter. I mean, he can shoot. But yeah, if LeBron, part of this is he wants to win another MVP because it's in totality what his resume is going to look like. And Skip Bayless, has said that LeBron's all about this legacy because he's never going to catch Jordan, although he only trails him by 2 in championships. He does have a chance to equal him. And I think if he equals him in championships, then my side of the argument becomes even stronger that he is the greatest player ever because there'll be a lot of other things that he would surpass Jordan on. Going to 6 finals and losing is better than not going to finals. I mean, if anybody
if he catches Jordan, it becomes a very, very serious argument. Like it's hard to argue against.
Right. Yeah.
So
6 and 6 in the
let's
finals
say this,
is better than
Sap.
6-0.
Is there a minimum number of games LeBron has to play at this statistical pace for him to win MVP? Does he have to play 72 games, miss only 10?
Well, that's the season.
Or more than that.
No, 72
Oh, yeah,
is
you're
the
right.
season.
I'm still thinking 82.
Season.
So does he have to play
Let's say
62 games?
64. I think 64 because I would say if you give him 8 games off, that's around 11% off, which is reasonable, especially in a condensed schedule. And it may benefit the Lakers for him to take those 8 games off. Although,
but there is,
wants to get the
I think there is a threshold for games he has to play to qualify.
Right. Bill Walton was like the last MVP I remember that played like 58 out of 82, but his numbers were just so ridiculous. And the team in the games he played was like 50 and 8. So they said,
and I mean, as of today, LeBron's on pace to play every game. So the only reason I'm bringing it up is because you would think, considering his age and the Lakers' title aspirations, they would at some point want to protect him from himself. Not that anybody has more decision power in LA than LeBron. If he wants to play, he's playing. No one can tell him not to. So it's kind of going to be up to him. But I think that's the one thing, if you're going to look at something getting in the way from your perspective of him winning MVP, it would be the amount of games he plays.
Right.
And especially if the second half of the season gets even more condensed because of the missed games in the first half of the season, you're going to be seeing some triple backs and some back-to-back games, and those take a toll, certainly. So I'll do my top 5 guys, bottom to top. My fifth guy is, you're going to make fun of me, but it's Jaylen Brown. 27 points per game, 5.6 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.5 steals. He's got a PER of, and I like these advanced stats.
You love PER. You like PER more than most cats.
25.9. That's good for 9th in the NBA. The Celtics are 10-7, 5th in the East. Nothing to write home about. But Brown has been far and away their best player. He's been durable. He's played great both ways. I think you got to take that into consideration when you're talking about MVP, is that he's played at an all defensive level too. And he's been the Celtics' primary scorer. He scored over 40 twice. He's done anything you could ask of a guy to be in the MVP consideration. Brown has done. So I think he deserves a lot of credit, and he's who I have 5th. The last 2 guys I had out are Doncic and Giannis. Same reasons as you. Giannis, again, I'm sure by the end of the season, will end up top 5 in MVP voting. That's just how I see it playing out. He'll muscle his way into the numbers, and the record will be too good to ignore, is my guess. Doncic's numbers are just fantastic, but right now the team isn't good enough for me to warrant putting him in conversation. Kawhi also was a tough omission, but he hasn't played enough games for me to put him in consideration. After Jaylen Brown, I have Kevin Durant. 30 and a half points per game, which is absurd coming off an Achilles injury. Just ridiculous. 7.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists. So 37 and 5. I mean, those are just ridiculous
That's
numbers
good.
for a guy coming off of what was considered to be a career-ending injury. 1.5 blocks a game. Just throw those in there too. He's got a 26 points, almost 26.7 per, which is good for 5th in the NBA. The Nets are 12 and 8, which is 4th in the East. I think people expect that record to tick up a little bit. The reason I have him at 4 and not a little bit higher, because the numbers are outstanding. I think that, and I knew you were saying the load management thing is going to be the reason why he doesn't win MVP. I agree with you to an extent. I think the bigger reason it's going to be because he has 2 other All-Stars on his team, and that tends to cancel itself out in any sport when you're talking about MVP. They sort of penalize you for being on teams with other good players when it comes to MVP. It seems like. That seems to be the case in virtually. I mean, baseball doesn't really matter because it's an individual, such an individual.
It's all about numbers,
team thing. But in basketball and football, they do seem to penalize you for having good players around you when you're talking about MVP. For whatever reason, that's just how it goes. And they have another guy on the team who's won MVP before. Kevin Durant's won one before. I just can't see them saying, Durant, you're an MVP when you're playing with James Harden and Kyrie Irving. Even though they might end up with the best record in the East, he might end up leading the league in scoring. I think that there'll be some canceling out of votes there. So I think he'll end up top 5, but I don't think he'll win it. I have Jokic at 3rd. He's averaging 25, 11.8, so almost 12 rebounds a game and 9 assists per game. 1.5 steals per game. 1.5 steals per game, which is, I don't know how he's doing that. He's got a 30.55 per, which is 1st in the NBA. So he's the most efficient player in the NBA. And the Nuggets are 11-7, 4th in the West, right about where people, I think, expected them to be. They've played a little bit up and down, but are a very good team who should be in the mix for the conference finals in the West. I have your guy LeBron at 2nd. 25.5 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, 7.5 assists. Absurd. Just absurd numbers for a 36-year-old guy to be putting up. And this is why I have him at 2, Sap. 25.05 per, very good, but 15th in the NBA. So below all those guys I just mentioned, the Lakers have the 2nd best record in the West, 14-6. He's played every game, which I put that into consideration too. I think that needs to be in consideration when we're talking about MVP, how available you are. But that 15th per stuck out to me. I think it's mostly because he's not a great shooter. If I'm, I haven't crunched all the numbers. I'm not, John Hollinger or Kirk Goldsberry, crunching every single stat. I just looked at the per at 15, which is obviously still elite, but he's not an efficient shooter and he's not a good free throw shooter. Those are going to knock those numbers down. And he plays with Anthony Davis, who's a better teammate than any of these other guys have, with maybe the exception of Durant having James Harden. I would take Anthony Davis over Harden, though, in my opinion. So I think those cancel each other out a little bit. So my top candidate is, as you could probably guess, is Joel Embiid right now. 27.7 points per game, 11.1 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 1.5 blocks. He's got the 2nd best per in the NBA at 30.17. They are 13-6, which is the best record in the East. The Sixers have played fantastic. A lot of credit goes to Joel Embiid. Maybe more credit goes to Doc Rivers, who is my coach of the year right now. I know we're not doing coach of the year voting today, but if I had to pick one, he seems to have righted that ship in Philadelphia. And I also look at, again, this is something I look at when you're talking about MVP with the other guys. Who's he got on the rest of his team? I like the makeup of their roster, but take Embiid away from that team. What the hell? And replace him with the league average center. What the hell are they? Not very good, I would imagine, just because you're really hard pressed to get scoring suddenly. Their 2nd best player, Ben Simmons, does not score at all. So I look at that as he's really impacting winning games with how well he's playing. I do think that there's a very strong chance he slows down because he hasn't showed commitment to being in shape. But today, the assignment was, who's your top 5 MVP candidates today? And today, Joel Embiid is in shape and trying really hard, and they do have the best record in the East, and they just beat the Celtics twice in a row and the Lakers. So they're beating good teams. He's playing well against those teams. So that's who I have as MVP right now. Embiid, will it hold up? Probably not, but hey, it's an improvement from where the Sixers have been in the past couple of years and from where he's been in the past couple of years. I think this is the season people have been sort of waiting for from him.
And we have to go back decades the last time that a true center won the MVP, right? I mean, Shaq in 2000 won the MVP.
I guess if you don't consider Tim Duncan a true center.
Yeah, I mean, Duncan to me was always a power forward.
Yeah, I would say he was more of a power forward
/ basketball player. I mean,
refused to be acknowledged as a center, so I respect his wishes.
He was just like a basketball player, right? He was just one of those guys that you were like, he was positionless because he could.
Yeah, so I guess you would say Shaq was the most clear cut
even if you
center.
include Duncan, we're going back a decade and a half, right? Because Duncan won a couple back in the early aughts. Yeah, it's normally been Steve Nash won a couple.
LeBron plays center.
Yeah, he basically can if he wants to. Yeah, I mean Durant is big enough to play center. He won an MVP, but it's more about the wings, and those are the guys that dominate the league right now. The 6'5" to 6'10" guys who can do so many things, and that's why
look at my top five
real
candidates.
Opportunity.
Brown, Durant, LeBron are all threes. Jokic and Embiid are bigs. It's hard to win it as a point guard. That's why I think Curry's wins were very impressive.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so those are who we got as our MVP candidates. And Sap, to finish off the show today, we talked a lot about individual players. I want to talk about some teams. I'm going to give you this exercise. Is this legitimate? Is this a real phenomenon? Or is it fake? Is it not something that's really going to play itself out for the rest of the season? So I'm going to give you 2 teams from the Eastern Conference and 2 teams from the Western Conference. I'm going to tell you their records. I'm going to tell you some of their key wins or losses. And you're going to tell me if that's going to hold up, if it's real or if it's a mirage. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, let's play real or not. That's the most creative name I could come up for it. I'm going to start out with the Eastern Conference champion from last year, the Miami Heat. They are 6-12, good for 13th in the East. They've lost 5 straight games. They have losses this season. Their worst losses would be against Detroit and at Toronto. They've played a bit of a tough schedule, but 5 straight losses, all to pretty good teams. 6-12, 13th in the East. Is this real or is this a mirage, Sep?
I think it's real. And I think it was a mirage them getting to the NBA Finals last year. They just were good enough to beat the Celtics. Bubble mirage, and they just weren't. They were just good enough. They matched up greatly against the Milwaukee Bucks. I was not shocked that they beat the Bucks in round 2. They just somehow managed to match up really well against them. I think they were 3-1 during the regular season against Milwaukee last year. And Jimmy Butler caught fire and did a lot of great things. And the young shooters, Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero, were just on fire for most of the postseason. Then they were able to beat the Celtics, and then again, they ran up against the Lakers, and nobody was beating the Lakers last year. I think it's real because, first of all, they had the same offseason as the Lakers. Their season ended in middle of October, and they're back to playing 9 weeks later, and the Lakers have been able to hit the road running, and the Heat haven't. I also think Jimmy Butler, who is a player that I think got slightly overrated last year because he was the best player on a team that went to the finals.
Yeah, Skip Bayless had him as like his second best player in the NBA at one
right.
point.
Yeah. Okay. Good for Skip. I mean, I'm sure he put him over LeBron because LeBron's never the best player according to Skip. But I think Jimmy Butler is back to what he normally is, which is, an all-star caliber player. I get it. But things don't always end well for Jimmy Butler in many locations, right? Whether it's Chicago or Minnesota, Philadelphia, this could kind of implode at some moment. Those young shooters, now people have a better beat on them, right? So they're not going to leave Hero and Duncan Robinson as open as they were last year. And Bam Adebayo, I think, is plateaued. He's what he is, which is a really good player. So I think there's a real possibility they don't make the playoffs. The thing is, the East isn't quite as deep as the West in terms of quality teams. Like you've got teams like Dallas not in the playoffs yet, and we expect them to be there. I think there's a real possibility that Miami doesn't make the playoffs this year.
So you were saying it is real. Heat 6-12 right now, 13th in the East. May not. They're going to be in serious danger of not making the playoffs. Yep. I would be very curious. We might have to ask our friends at Elias Sports Bureau when the last time a conference champion didn't make the playoffs the following year. I think that's a good
Oh,
trivia question.
That's
I don't
easy.
know the answer. Well,
That's easy.
that returned their team.
Oh, return the team because it's wherever LeBron James
Yeah,
leaves.
it's not. That doesn't count. No.
Okay.
That returned their team. It's the same roster. It's the same roster.
Yeah.
That's why it's weird. The Cavs losing LeBron and not making the playoffs wasn't weird. Everybody knew that was going to happen.
An impact, right? And then Durant leaving Golden State and Klay Thompson getting hurt. Obviously, Golden State wasn't going to make the postseason, and then Steph getting hurt early in the season. That's a good question.
I'll put the caveat on it. That returns their team,
not including LeBron James. Which team?
Not including huge free agent departures. Do you want to do a team from the Western Conference or finish off the Eastern Conference?
Up to you, Jet. You're the man in charge.
All right,
here.
let's do another. We'll finish off the teams from the Eastern Conference and then we'll move out to the West. All right, real or mirage, Sap? The New York Knicks are 8-11, currently the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. They have wins against Boston, in Golden State, in Indiana, against the league best record Utah Jazz, and against the Milwaukee Bucks. Are the New York Knicks a legitimate playoff team this year? Are those wins legitimate? Is this a real Knicks team?
Hell no. This is a mirage. Although
look at those wins, Sap.
I know. They beat the Celtics by 30.
And they beat the Pacers and the Jazz and the Bucks.
Yeah, and they're doing it with 7 power forwards. They're just building
a
roster
with
power forwards. And Austin Rivers and Julius Randle. Maybe we should have put him in the MVP candidate in the MVP discussion. No, I don't see this continuing. Thibodeau is a really good coach, Tom Thibodeau, but he's another guy. I think after about a certain period of time, he's just going to wear thin on the players. Kind of like Stan Van Gundy's already done in New Orleans.
Plays as starters 48 minutes a night.
Yeah, they're too much. I mean, it's like, this is not college basketball where the coach is the star and the players follow the coach's lead. So I think it's a mirage. They'll come back to life. And I think as some of these teams get traction, teams like Brooklyn, I think the Celtics, when they get everybody in place and if they can add a piece, those teams will start to put together really good runs and it will damage the chances of the Knicks, playing at this level right now.
I just think it's the 8-11 record is surprising. I thought they would be far worse than that. But the more surprising thing is the quality wins they have. Yeah. I mean, Boston, Golden State, Indiana, those are all road wins, and then Utah, Milwaukee. I mean, they've beaten legitimately good teams. I can't explain how. And I feel like if you're a Knicks fan, you're screwing us out of a good pick again for no reason.
Like the Jets, right? Why did the Jets?
It's bizarre. Like the Knicks. Yeah. The Knicks are like, we want to build a culture, but we also need a centerpiece player. But you can't do it in the same season.
No, you can't.
They're never going to be fixed until they sell the team. But so you're not buying the Knicks hype. You don't think that they, as the 8th seed, could take out the potential top seed 76ers or Nets or Celtics or Heat,
Brooklyn?
Bucks?
Yeah, they're not beating any of those.
The Knicks team, an 8-seed Knicks team has gone to the finals before. Sap, keep that in mind.
Yeah, that was in '99, right, when they ended up losing to San Antonio.
So maybe they have a little bit of that magic if they get.
That was a really short season, though, Jet. That was like a 48 or a 50 game schedule. And look, the whole league is kind of choppy this year, right? We can agree on that. The Lakers look unbeatable.
No fans makes a big difference.
No fans makes a difference. The short off season for some teams, the incredibly long off season for other teams. I mean, there were teams that haven't played since last March that are all of a sudden thrown into the NBA, a month and a half ago. So it's a really choppy season. I was talking to some friends of mine who are huge NBA fans and I can't get a feel for this year. I mean, like I said, look at the Lakers. They looked unbeatable and they lose to the Pistons. I mean, so there's going to be a lot of unpredictability, but I think as you get closer to midseason, and again, you get that second half of the schedule out, you'll get the teams that you expect to be closer to the top. But it's been a very choppy season so far in the NBA. And look, I don't think it gets back to normal till the following year when hopefully they go back to, fans in the stands starting the season in October. Although I think they like the idea of starting it a little bit later and getting more traction, not going head to head against the NFL.
What I thought was interesting is that they are not fans in the stands, but some arenas are choosing to play fake crowd noise, and others are not choosing to play fake crowd noise.
Yeah.
Individual choice. I prefer the games with the no fake crowd noise. I like hearing the players, although that's a dangerous game in the NBA to live broadcast what players have to say.
Especially with Marcus Smart on the floor.
Yeah. Scott, they're lucky Kevin Garnett's not active anymore.
Oh, man. You're not kidding.
They'd have to mute the whole broadcast. But let's head to the West before we finish up the show, Sap. Same game, real or a mirage. Let's do the Dallas Mavericks. They're 8-10, 12th in the West. They have 3 losses in a row. Their worst losses coming at Toronto, twice to Chicago somehow. They got swept in the season series against Chicago, and then against Houston, who's sort of a middling team. I know you've talked plenty about Luka Doncic. Is this real? Are they in danger of not making the playoffs this season?
I think it's a mirage. I think they'll right the ship. He's just too good, Luka. Porzingis is coming off that injury, so it's going to take him a little time to be more like Porzingis. We both like Rick Carlisle as a coach. I think he gets a little overrated because he does have an NBA championship, but I think he's still, a top 10 coach in the league, shall we say. And they've got a front office that will make a move that they deem a possible improvement for the team. So I think they'll right the ship. I don't know if
what's
they can
the
get
problem
in the top
there?
4. Well, I think it's more on the defensive end. They're so loaded offensively. I mean, they set
nobody's
records last
committed
year for
to
efficiency.
defense.
When your best player is agnostic to defense, it permeates through the entire roster. It really does. I mean, go back to the Celtics when Garnett came here. He was the best player on that team. He was committed to defense. Everybody else became committed to defense. We see that with Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. When your best player shows up and he's the first guy in and the last guy out and he's all about team, then everybody else follows. And I think that Luka is such a young player that he's going to need to be a better leader. And that takes time. Even LeBron, who I think is the best leader in the sport right now, it took him time to learn to do that. That's why I think it would be good to have a real veteran presence on that team in Dallas to kind of take some of that pressure off of Luka. Porzingis I don't see as a real leader. And again, bigs generally aren't leaders. They're kind of introverts by nature.
Also hurt all the time. So
he's always hurt all the time. You can only lead, while you're in a uniform, not in a suit. So I think that's the thing. But look, Luka's just so damn talented that he's going to win a bunch of games on his own. So I think they'll get into the playoffs. I don't think they'll be a top 4 team in the West, but they'd be a pain in the butt in the first round, like they were last year against the Clippers, taking them to 6 games.
Yeah, so Luka's obviously still going to be looking to win his first playoff series. Eventually that will come. This year, they are right now on the outside looking in, still early, but 8-10 as we stand today, which is 12th in the Western Conference, but I think like a game out of 8th place. All right, the last team we're going to do this for, Sap, another Western Conference team, real or mirage, the Utah Jazz, winners of 10 games in a row. They are 14-4, which is good for the best record, not just in the Western Conference, but the NBA. Some key wins for them at Milwaukee and at Denver. Jazz, real or mirage?
Mirage. I mean, I think they're a really good team. They're well coached. My thoughts on Quinn Snyder. I think he's one of the 5 best coaches in the sport. I think he's kind of like the Western Conference version of Brad Stevens, although he seems to be able to coach superstar players. So I'd even elevate him beyond Brad Stevens. Tremendous coach.
Does he know how to use
Quinn
timeouts?
Snyder.
Because that's how you get above Brad Stevens.
That's true too. Yeah.
Does he play rotations regularly? Because that's better than Brad Stevens.
Yeah.
We could do this another day with Brad Stevens.
Yeah,
talk.
I know. You Green Teamers love to bash Stevens, and I get it because it's like his first few years here is like, wow, this guy is brilliant, and then it's kind of leveled off. As the talents improved, it seems like his coaching has gone down at some point. But Utah is a really well-coached team. Donovan Mitchell, I think, is an ascending leader. That's the thing I like about Donovan Mitchell, and maybe that is the comparison with Dwayne Wade. At a young age, he's a leader. He's tough. Gobert's an obvious defensive force. And, they seem to get more out of their players than just anyone else. But they can't hang with the Lakers or the Clippers. And I think if Denver, gets their act together, Michael Porter Jr. elevates his game somewhat, I think Denver's a better team than Utah. And I think Utah will fall to maybe the 4 or 5 seed, which is still pretty darn good in the Western Conference, right? But I don't see them being the top team in the West. I still think that's the Lakers and the Clippers, followed by Denver, and then fill in the gaps after that. And I think Utah's one of those teams. Are
they better than you thought they would be, or is the 10-game win streak just a matter of sort of they're peaking at an early time?
Yeah, they are. And again, it's so sudden this season, right? That you can make these wide-ranging deductions based off of like 2 to 3 weeks, and a team gets really hot like Utah, or gets really cold like Miami, because Miami's the polar opposite of Utah, right? They're disappointing. There are 5 straight losses, And, but because it's a shorter season, that's going to be magnified. So I think they're a little better than I thought they'd be. I still think, they'll probably end up where I think they belong, but you got to give them credit for what they've done. And again, they have a pretty good home court advantage. Utah's a tough place to play. The altitude, again, they don't have fans in the stands, but it seems like a team that brings it every night. And that can get you some wins in the NBA, right?
Yeah.
If you show up every night and play defense like they do, you're going to beat teams that maybe show up and aren't really into playing that particular night.
Here's how I explain it, because I agree with you. I don't think they have a chance in hell of advancing far in the West. I think that they probably, if I had to put money on it, I would have them losing the first round, regardless of where they're seated, because the West is deeper than the East. The East is very top heavy and really good, but when you get around to the 7 and 8 seeds, it's kind of crap. Yep. The West will have a strong 7 and 8 seed, no matter who makes it. So I could see them losing the first round. The reason I think that they've been, and you've seen sort of these streaks in the NBA, is twofold. One, and this is specifically, I'm going to talk about Utah. The playing of the series, these mini series, sort of gets you, if you're playing a bad team, you're playing a bad team twice in a row. So there's 2 wins in a row right there for you. If your next 2 games is another mini series against another bad team, then suddenly you have 4 wins in a row. Right. So, schedule is part of it. And the having to play the same team, if it's a crap team, or if it's a good team, like, Miami has lost to these 5 games have all been against good teams that they lost to. Then, you might drop 2 in a row or 3 in a row or 5 in a row. So I think that's part of it. I think Utah also, teams that don't have superstar players are affected on the road when there's a crowd. And now that there's no crowd, guys like Donovan Mitchell, who's, again, agree with you, top 20 player, Rudy Gobert, maybe a top 30 player, they don't have to compete with, people booing them and the pressure of playing on the road as much. So it's a lot looser for them. I also think something with Utah that neither you or I mentioned yet is Mike Conley is a lot more comfortable in his second year there. And he's really provided a nice, steady leadership at that point guard position and also consistent scoring, because Gobert's not a scorer. He's averaging like 13 a game. So it's a good secondary source of scoring for Donovan Mitchell. Or just a reliable, good player. So I think his emergence and being more comfortable in the second year there with the roster, because remember, he played on Memphis on the same Grizzlies team for his whole career before joining Utah last season. I think that's helped them become a better team than I was expecting. But I still, again, if I had to put my money on it, I would say they lose in the first round, especially if they end up dropping out of that 1 seed spot the most expect them. I mean, 10 wins, you can't really take anything away from them. But there's still, I think, just a game up on the Lakers and the Clippers. So it's not like they have their 10 wins to propel them to a spot that's locked in at the 1 seed. So plenty of more basketball to play. But so we have a couple of mirages, a couple of real deals in the NBA, and I'll keep bringing this back a couple of times over the course of the year, Sap, to see what you think. What's real? What's a mirage? We did our MVP candidates. We did our All-Stars. We are done here, Sap. We have fulfilled our podcast obligations. Do you have any exciting plans this weekend? I know that you're going to be watching the Lakers and Celtics, rooting heavily against my green team.
Yes, I'll be rooting for the purple and gold. I'll wear my Lakers mask, which I have. I've got my Packers mask. We're going to wash that and put that away for a little bit. Although I wash the mask all the time. I don't want to be, making people think I'm not very, very clean. But I hope LeBron plays. Again, we're recording the podcast the day before that game. I hope he plays, because if he doesn't, I know the talking heads in this city are going to go nuts and say he wants to avoid the Celtics, which I don't get, since he beats them like a drum in the postseason.
He loves avoiding them.
He still has not gotten over Jason Tatum dunking on him 3 years ago in the Eastern Conference Finals. By the way, the Cavaliers won that game, went to the finals, and LeBron's won a title since.
Traumatized him,
to the point where he just has never recovered. But yeah, I hope he plays. Davis, I'd like to see him play because, again, it's a important game, because you want to see the Celtics at their best, the Lakers at their best, and see where these two teams are at. So it's going to be fun watching some games over the weekend. There's no football this weekend, another week till the Super Bowl. So you have to kind of replan your Sundays, because since September, we've all been in the same routine. It really is. I mean, it's going to be like, okay, I do the same routine every Sunday, go food shopping, come back, watch the Sunday, political shows. I like to, watch those shows to, keep up on what's going on in DC. and then, get ready to watch football for 9-10 hours. And then, Monday Night Football, we're not going to have any of this until a week from Sunday for the Super Bowl, but maybe we'll watch the Senior Bowl because apparently Bill Belichick isn't. So, maybe we'll do some scouting on the players that the Patriots might be able to draft.
If you don't sail consistently, Sap, you lose the ability to sail. It's got to be
That's true.
Practicing. It's not like riding a bike. You need to keep honing your skills. So I respect him for, paying attention to his craft. All right, last word, Sap. Do the Lakers win or the Celtics win? Just put your money where your mouth is. Who wins the game?
Celtics.
Okay, Lakers. The Celtics don't have a single person who can defend Anthony Davis. If he plays,
I don't know if he plays.
If he plays, the Lakers win. If he doesn't, the Celtics win.
Okay, no, I can buy into that, and also again, Davis is really load managing, and he seems at times to be load managing. If I can say it, I've only said it 75 times in the podcast. He seems to do that more on the offensive end. On the defensive end, he's still superb, but it oftentimes looks like he's not engaged offensively. And this could be a plan that the Lakers just want to build up the confidence of, their other players, Montrezl Harrell or Schroeder or, the guy who I think has developed into their third most reliable scorer, KCP. In the bubble last year, he was outstanding and continued to play well. And it's going to be a fun game, though. I like that Saturday night game on ABC.
I got news for you, Sap. The Celtics don't have anybody to defend Montrezl Harrell either. He'll go for 30 points.
They don't. Yeah, he could. What they do with that position, I have no clue. Miles Turner would have looked good, right? But, what the hell? They didn't want him.
Oh, that traded player exception's putting up a lot of points.
It's so good to have that, isn't that? I mean, God knows what you can get for that.
Maybe Miles Eric Bledsoe. Woohoo!
Yes, or maybe Drew Bledsoe, or pick another Bledsoe. I think Drew Bledsoe would help. He's bigger than Eric Bledsoe. He's 6'6". Bledsoe's like 6'2". But Miles Turner is leading the league in blocked shots. That would, I would think, help the Celtics. But, Danny Ainge can't just make a trade. Can't make a trade to improve his team. He's got to screw the other team, or he doesn't make the deal.
It's a good policy.
Yes.
When negotiating, yeah.
He should be in Washington, D.C. in the political cauldron where, you either get everything or you get nothing.
Yeah, it's a really good life philosophy. All right, Sap, yes. We will be back at it next week, and we will see if our predictions hold true. I think we're both trying to reverse jinx our teams with the Celtics and Lakers, but we will see what happens. Plenty more NBA stuff to get to. Thank you all for listening. Remember, you can catch us on the Full Press Coverage website, on Spotify. We are all over the place. Check out our Twitters. Mine is at Jet Stryer. Sap, yours is at
John Sap 25.
John Sap 25. Perfect. Catch us there. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Again, this has been the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are presented, as always, by Full Press Coverage. See ya.